Hey guys, welcome back to the channel, and today we're going to be looking at a basic guide on Troy resources. So Troy introduces some new resources on the campaign map. We no longer have just one universal currency. It is now split up into 5 different resources, and each of them has their own unique use. You can see here we have food, wood, stone, bronze, and gold. So food will be used for the recruitment of units and upkeep of them as well. And also it is used for the cost of agent actions. There are a few buildings that do cost food, but there aren't too many. Then we have wood. Wood is used for the basic buildings. In the early game, you'll want to make sure you have a good source of wood, or maybe get some bartering deals going because you're going to need a lot of it for the expansions. Stone is used for the more advanced buildings. These will be the higher tier settlement upgrades, military building upgrades, advanced resource production buildings, or religious buildings. You won't need this immediately in the early game, but make sure you have a good stockpile so it'll save you some time later. Then we have bronze. Bronze is used for the recruitment of more advanced units and sometimes the upkeep of those advanced units. There may be some advanced buildings that require bronze. You'll start to gain access to the more advanced units around the mid-game. We'll say maybe around like turn 30 or 40. You want to make sure you have a good amount of bronze stockpiles so that way you can recruit the more advanced units much more quickly. And then we have gold. Gold is used for recruiting mythical units, agents, and the highest tier units of each faction, although it is not required for the upkeep of those special units. Gold is also used for the construction of the highest level buildings and performing rituals. Another note on gold is that it is a depleting resource on the campaign map, meaning gold will eventually become scarce in the later game. And so as you can see, when you hover over these icons, you can see how much you're making each turn. It'll say change next turn, and that's the amount you will be getting next turn. Negative means you're losing that amount each turn. And so you really, if it's negative, you need to go and fix that as fast as you can, unless you have a large stockpile of that resource. So now that we know the resources, we need to know where to get each of these resources. If you take a look at your settlements, hover over them, you can see icons. This one is a stone quarry settlement. So this will be a stone producing settlement. And then we have this one, which is a wood producing settlement. And then this one is a food producing settlement. You can also see that these settlements have anchor icons. This means that they are port settlements. Port settlements have access to boat stands, ship stands, and sheltered ship stands. These provide growth and food, plus increase the overall resource production of the province. So whenever you are occupying port settlements, make sure you're upgrading those boat stands as well. So when expanding, you'll need to take a look at what resources you need, and then take a look at which settlements are around you and what they produce. This will play a role in which way you want to expand. The campaign map is very dynamic. While there are recommended expansion directions, you can expand in any direction you feel is right. It is up to you to decide whether or not it will be worthwhile. We will always have one settlement capital, and then the rest will always be minor settlements. And if you look here, we'll come down here to our building selection, and these will be your 5 resource production buildings for your minor settlements. First being the basic one, gives stone, 20 stone per turn, and a high influence bonus will give 25 stone per turn. You can tell if your province is under a high influence on the left hand side here. You can see we are at 46%, so we do not have a high influence bonus. High influence bonuses are identified as 60% or higher, so we are not getting that bonus. You always want, in the early game, you always want to start with these buildings first. Next we have the builder's quarters, 28 stone per turn, plus an added bonus of -1 to construction time of all buildings. Only downside is that we get negative influence. Usually I will build this building if I have another building to counteract this negative influence, which I do here, the Chieftain's Hall, +5 influence over the province. So if you have one of these buildings in your province, then it'd be a good idea to have one of these negative influence resource production buildings. Next is the ore smelter. This increases overall resources in the province at the cost of happiness. You can put these in your settlements, but I find in the early game it's not really worth it because the settlements aren't producing that much resources anyway, so this 5% increase isn't going to be much. It's not going to be worth it. And then we have this is the more advanced building. So this is the basic resource production building, and this is the more advanced one. Gives 40 stone per turn and 56 if at a high influence. It's basically the same as the basic building, except it just costs more. 1800 wood and 640 stone. So during the early game, you won't really be able to afford these yet, but mid-game to late game, you'd want to prioritize building these in your settlements first, because if you can afford it, it's a good investment. Just put these in there first. And then lastly, we have the negative growth resource production building. This will always give the highest amount at the cost of growth. Usually I don't go for this building because we always want our provinces to have growth, because we need to get these capitals up to level 5 and we need to get all the minor settlements up to level 3. Which brings me to my next point. During the game, you'll always want to prioritize upgrading your settlement buildings first over anything else, because they provide extra building slots and they provide extra growth, more happiness, and more influence over the entire province. So it's a complete win. And then we have the ports. You'll want to upgrade these next. These ports are pretty good. They provide a lot of food. They increase all resource production in the entire province, and they give growth. And then after that, that's when you start prioritizing building your resource production buildings or military buildings or any other buildings. Just make sure to prioritize settlements and then prioritize the boats. And so the basic layout of this resource production settlement is you get 5. So if we hover over here to the woodcutter settlement, we still have 5 different buildings. Same thing, it's 26 per turn, 34 wood per turn if high influence. Then we have this one, slightly higher resource with an added bonus at the cost of negative influence. And then we have a plus 5% to all resources at the cost of happiness. I was trying this out here. It wasn't worth it to me. And then we have the high cost advanced resource production building here. Still the same thing, costs way more, but it is worth it in the mid game. Then we have the negative growth resource production building. And usually don't go for this building here. So this will always be the basic layout for resource production settlements. Prioritize building basic building first. If you have a positive influence in your province, then you can build this one as well. And then for the third slot, if you do have a third slot, put this one there once you can afford it. That'll be it for today's guide, guys. I hope you found it useful for your current campaigns. If you haven't already, check out my faction unit guides to figure out how to utilize each faction's units and what units you should recruit for your armies. If you enjoyed the video, drop a like and subscribe for more.